Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Our topic today is on Office Connector for Sage 300 CRE with presenter James Coyle from Event One Software. A couple of housekeeping items. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so if you have questions, please type them into the questions box, and we'll address them at the end of the session. We will be recording this webinar, and we'll email out a copy to everyone later today. I will now turn it over to you, James.
Well, thank you so much, and to Gordon, and thank you everyone for joining, and the folks who weren't able to join but are hearing this from a recorded perspective. Thanks for your investing your time. We're going to give you an overview. It's going to be a very concise overview of very powerful, extensive technology. So we're not going to be able to go deep into anything, but we have content available to you. So if you want to explore any of the topics that we cover in more depth, then just let us know in our follow-up, and then we'll be able to get that content to you. So I'm presenting the Sage Office Connector product suite, and just for your general understanding as far as this technology, it is extensively utilized by your peers that use Sage 300 Construction Real Estate. There are over 2,500 companies that utilize this technology, and that means they purchased and utilized it, and that's over 10,000 concurrent uses. When I say they've purchased and utilized it, what many people don't realize is that there's a scaled down aspect of Office Connector that's installed with Sage when Sage was installed, and there are several templates that anybody can use, assuming the person trying to use the report has the security rights from Sage to be able to see the data. And I'll touch on that briefly, but if you have any concerns about security or of any of the types of things I demonstrate, please ask, because we wouldn't see this kind of utilization by your peers this extensively if there were holes like that, from a security standpoint. We're going to focus on, with the assumption that whoever it is that's using the workbook has the correct access to the data in Sage. And the reason we believe that the technology is so extensively used is because it's easy to set up, learn, and use. And why is that? Because it's Excel-based. If you understand how to use Excel, then you'll have an edge in using this technology, which hopefully will become apparent as I demonstrate things to you. Now, with this technology, you can do far more than just reporting. It is reporting and analytics, business intelligence, those kinds of things, and data management, work process management. There's really so many things that you can do with this technology. It can be quite shocking, surprising, and we want to introduce that to you. But it's all about saving you time. So to talk about what I'm going to demonstrate, and I'm going to jump right into showing the software, but in this product suite, there's actually several products families: the query, the write, and the import. So query pulls the data into Excel. Notice I use the word pull. It's not push. I'm going to talk about the difference almost here immediately. But write and import, people tend to want to touch information one time, not have to manually enter things. It's 2019, for heaven's sake. Things should be very seamless and easy and secure, and that's what we're talking about. With Sage Construction Real Estate, you can do things to enhance your work process efficiencies that you can't do with really any other ERP system, and we want to make you aware of that. So if you don't get that out of what I'm showing, then you've missed something. I've been ineffective, and ask more questions, and let's take a deeper dive. And I think that you'll be pretty amazed. Now, in addition to querying, which is, think about it as reporting, there's a special branch of that is financial reporting. And when it comes to financial statements, we created specific technology related to query called financials that extends the query capability. So that's what you're talking about, are 3 products families, and they're licensed. Here, this slide talks about how it's licensed. It's concurrent use mostly, just like your other Sage applications, job costs, accounts payable, general ledger. You get a certain number of concurrencies, and that's how many people can be using the the capabilities of that respective product, and the same is true here. So if you'll have questions of, can I keep people to use certain licenses and not others and so on? Yes, you can. I'm not going to go into that because we have limited time, but we can explain that to you, and I'm confident you'll be very satisfied with the level of control you have. When we talk about importing, it's a special area because writing and importing are both related about getting data back into Sage. And importing, it says here, it's a site license, and I'll want to explain that to you. But I'll tell you that we have recorded presentations that go into a lot more depth, like on just financials or like distributed project cost forecasting or all sorts of different types of things that we do. And we have one on delving in depth on write and import. So if you don't understand the differences, then just ask for that recording, and Cheryl in the follow-up can get the link to you. Okay, so I'm going to just pop out, and I'm going to start in Sage. So I'm in Sage, in the Sage desktop. And what I did is I went to job cost and I launched a report. This is how you're currently using it. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to address something like what is Office Connector versus what it's not. So if you look at a traditional report and you have parameters, when you're using Office Connector, you could do the same thing. You'll have parameters that you'll be able to put in, and then you'll be able to refresh the report. And for me, when I refresh the report, I might hit preview. Now, this is the problem with most reports, is that's it. It sits there and it looks at you, or you look at it. It doesn't look at you. It's just laying there. There's nothing. It's paper. It's a screen. And sometimes reports have been enhanced that you could get into more detail, but it's static. If you want to share this with someone and put comments or whatever, you probably have to print it out. It's not easy. Or you have to try to send it to Excel. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do. It's like, this is what I want. I just want to send it to Excel more efficiently. We call that pushing. That's pushing data. That is not what Office Connector is. It's exactly the opposite. So I'm going to show you that exact same concept. That's job cost entries, but I'm going to show it to you from inside of Excel. Now, to do that, I've already generated it. So I'm just going to come down here and pull up a transaction report. So this is an Excel workbook. It's got an information page that explains how this particular report works. It's got parameters, just like you saw in the other report. This is parameters. But see, it's here in Excel. I could fill out the parameters and tell it to refresh, just like that report. And now I have data. But now it's in Excel, and I have filter controls. So if I'm looking at this and go, oh, I just want to focus in on the labor and labor burden. Now I have that kind of a report. And if I want to share this with someone, I can share it with them. There's lots of ways to do it. So Office Connector lives inside of this add-ins in Excel. Office Connector is in Excel. That's where you work with Office Connector. And so if I'm over here and I want to make a copy of this workbook and it's just an Excel document, so I just share it with someone that's going to be using Excel, there's an option here on the Launchpad right over here. See where it says Save as Values? Once I save this workbook, and I could then refresh it at any point, tomorrow, the next day, but if I click Save as Values, I'll have another copy that's just Excel. It can't be refreshed, but I can share this information. So getting the data in a useful format that you can get to your answers more quickly, that's what this technology is all about. So I want to kind of show you the difference. It's not pushing something in there. And we're utilizing Excel. Like, how did the person who built this do this? How did they put on a filter control? You probably already know the answer to that. I'd say, well, how would you group columns? And you go, well, I'd highlight these columns right here. And in Excel, I might go to, I think, data and grouping right there. And that's the option. It's an Excel capability. How would I put on a filter? Well, I'd select the data. So we have a way to select all the data there. So there I'm selecting the data. And then right here on your home page, I'm clicking sort and filter right there. That's how you would do it if you were using this, and that's how you do it with this technology. Is that Office Connector? Did we invent those last two things I showed you? No, they're Excel. So we're leveraging Excel. That's the whole idea here. So one way of using this technology is have built reports, and they could be simple reports like this, or they could be more sophisticated. So let's say I wanted to have a cash flow report, and this is a cash flow by job. Now these two reports I'm showing you, they come with Office Connector. There's quite a few, and I'll show you what those are here in a moment. But here's a presentation of information. And I've got my jobs, and I got like cash in and out. This is sample data. Yours would look different. But let's say I wanted to share this with someone, like an executive or whoever. Well, what will make this report easier to look at and use? How about a graph? See this little plus over here? That's also grouping. Oh, there's a graph attached to it. Can you do that with your own reports? Can you build this sort of a thing? Absolutely. We want you to know that it's very powerful to just insert a graphical element onto a report. So why don't people do this more often when they work with Excel? Because you spend all your time pushing the data into Excel or typing it in, and then you're going to add a bunch of charts and graphs and then do it all again anytime the data changes. That's ridiculous. I mean, people don't spend the time doing it. The difference with Office Connector is if you build something with it, you can insert this graph, this chart, connect it right here, and it will refresh automatically when you refresh the data. And I just said refresh data. You're going, well, what does that mean? Well, I'm here in Excel, and I have this report. Tomorrow, later today, next week, I could either open this existing workbook up, or I could generate another one exactly the same way, and I can just hit this refresh button. And when I do that, it's going to reach into Sage and update all this information. So I can control, like when a report opens, I always want it to be current. I always want it to be the most current information. I can make my reports work that way. Now I'm using the word reports, but really it's much, much, much more than that. Because in Excel, it's not just a report like I showed you with a report writer or Crystal or whatever. Usually there's a report and you run it, and that's the only thing it does. And if you need to know something else, you have to go run another report. That's not how your peers who are experienced with this technology use it. They will have various tabs in a workbook, and all the data they need to get access to do their job, it's all right here. They can get at everything they need, all from one area. So Office Connector is far more than Excel-based reporting. We call it that because that's how people think of it, but there's so much more that you can do. And that's why you get the kind of market penetration that we have with this technology. So this is reporting, getting data out. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but let's say I wanted to know what, I look at a number and hold it, I made a profit. What's going on there? I don't like that. No, we do like that. But let's say you wanted to know what made up a number. What you can do with this technology is actually something similar to what people who use Crystal may know about, and that's a sub-report. I can create other reports in my workbook that are linked to data so that if I click this, it will get into the detail that makes that number up. So now I'm seeing a query, they just got refreshed with the data that made that up. And if I look at this cash received and I say, well, really it should be more than that, again, this is drill down enabled. Now you may say, can I do this? Can I build a report and then drill down enable it so I can get at the detail that backs it up, because my stakeholders, my company, they want that? And the answer is yes. So I click that and I see information here. Okay, so this is all fine and dandy, but what if you just wanted to build something yourself? Now really, that's how we thought this technology would be used. We didn't think there would be a whole bunch of reports that you might have. But a lot of people, when they use this technology, the ability to grab what they want as they need it. So you're doing your job, you're trying to figure something out. So I'm just going to go ahead and do something here from nothing. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go into Excel, and I've just got an blank Excel document. So let's say someone said, okay, I need to find general ledger related information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a query on the fly, right, just because I'm thinking about things. So right here, I'm going to come up to add-ins. And up to this point, I have been using what's called a query standard license. Very affordable. People get lots of those, so anybody can run any of the reports that they want. But now I'm going to build something. So this is a design. So this toolbar has a variety of options, and I'm going to use this query option right there. So right here, it allows me to connect to my Sage data. You don't create data sources. If you're familiar with that, you don't have to do that. Just pick your data folder in Sage, just like you're used to. You log in and put your password in, and the security that protects what someone can see, it's the ODBC security under Sage Security. ODBC stands for Open Database Connectivity. So that security is what locks down access from outside of Sage. And that works for Crystal or Access or whatever, and Office Connector as well. Okay, so here's a list of all the tables. I told you I wanted general ledger related things. So I'm going to type in GL, and as soon as I did that, I jumped down to this GL table. Now that I know that's what I want, but if I wasn't sure, I could hit preview, and it's showing me my data. Now this isn't your data, it's mine, but you would be seeing your data, and you go, yep, that's what I want. So I hit next, and I begin to say, okay, I want a few values here. So I grabbed a few values, and I want current balance, and I want future balance, and I want the year end, and these are all these values on the account table, and there's 2 years of detail right there. So I just grabbed all of that, and it's the same way as I would do it with an inquiry or report designer. So it should be very intuitive for you. And I could hit next. Now I could grab all the accounts, but let's say I only want to see like my liabilities. So I'm going to add a condition that the account type, so it's showing me all the fields on the account table. I'm saying the account type, and then I'm going to say is one of, and now I can pick different account types. So when I hit this list, these are my account types in Sage, and I'm going to say current liabilities, and that's all I happen to have. But if I had current and long-term, I could just pick them. And I showed you that because you might do a report and pick a whole bunch of different account types. And so now I have a condition, and you can build, you could do ands and ors and all that. It's all graphical. It's all very visual. So now I hit next, and I can now name this report. So you might have any number of reports in Excel workbook that you create. And I'm just going to hit finish, and I'm pulling the data. And so this is all the data on the account table. Now I did this actually for two purposes. I wanted to show you how easy it is to pull data in, but I also wanted to plant the seed of why there's a product called Office Connector Financials. And the reason is that when you do a financial, it's not just pulling data into Excel. And here's all the data. And there is another table that has 10 years of history, and I could pull that. But when you do a financial, it's not just pulling the data, it's assembling it in some desirable way. And so that's where Office Connector Financials comes in, is it's got a special capabilities that's specifically designed for financial purposes. And I don't have a ton of time to show you every piece and part, but I can produce much more powerful results, and I'm going to show you an example. So the first thing I'm going to do is just show you the launch pad, where the reports that I'm running, this launch pad will show you all these reports, right? So you get all of these. When you get Office Connector Query, you get all of, well, you'll see all of the launch pad. Now you can run any of these reports, but you can't send data back into Sage unless you had write or import. So you have to get the products that you need. But over here is a financials tab, and you get these when you get query and also financials. So I grabbed, say, a financial statement with drill down capability. So now I open this up. I've already done it for you, and I have a financial statement. So it's got tabs, like there's the information tab. Just take a moment and read the information tab when you're playing around with a product. It'll explain a lot of how to use the report. If I wanted to identify prefix groups, just like in financials, I could do it. I give it a name, I list out my prefixes. If you have more than 20, you can add columns. Here on the admin page is where I use it. So look at the things that I can do. like notice it says consolidate all my prefixes. That's interesting. But what if you had prefixes that were in different current periods, like one's in May and one's in June? Could you do a consolidated report? And the answer is yes. With financials, could you? No. But with this, you can. Can I, if my year is in December, so I haven't closed the year, and I want to run a financial for March, can I do that? Yes. Yeah. This can run off of future periods, and financials can't. So you just come over here and you tell it you want to run it for a calendar period instead of a year, and then you put in 2019 and 3 and hit refresh, and you get a result. Now, whenever you hit refresh, this particular report has a trial balance. There's a trial balance. Here's your base account, and that's a consolidation. Now, if you wanted your prefixes in different columns, there's a separate report here that is an entity comparison one, and that automatically does that. So, or you could just build it yourself. If you've got Query Designer and financials, you can build your own financials. Here's a balance sheet. Here's a profit and loss. But you remember what I told you before, the real power of this is pulling the data into Excel when you need it. Now that's different than a pivot table. A pivot table would be I'd pull all the detail in and then I'd use Excel to summarize it, which is nice for some purposes, but it's very slow. You're pulling, and plus you're duplicating all your data, and that people start to criticize use of Excel in that purpose. But this is the opposite. I'm building a report, but now I see a value and I go, I wonder what makes that up. Well, we have a query right here. Now there's nothing in it because I haven't drilled in, but I can drill into my current period, and it will pass parameters to this other report. And now I have the detail that backs up that financial. So you get all those financials when you get Office Connector Query, and you add the financials, and we strongly recommend it. And then you can build your own. I don't have the time to show you that, but we have presentations that are recorded that could show you that. So if you're interested, just let us know and we can give you some more content there. So as I've shown you, there's a lot on this launch pad, and I have other technology I want to quickly show you. But let's say you were looking at this and you said, I want to know all of these reports, all these things that come with Office Connector, where can I see them? Well, number one, you can see them from your Launchpad. If you went into your Launchpad, or excuse me, from the desktop. If I'm in Sage, if you come and find your Excel-based reporting, you're going to see options here, and that's a way to get to the Launchpad right there. Now, what are these reports? What are these Excel templates? These are the Office Connector starter templates. So you can use those without even buying Query. It's part of your Sage. By paying your updates, you get access to Office Connector Starter. So there they are. But there's the Launchpad, and that Launchpad will put me into Office Connector. So now another question people say is, well, that's interesting, but you showed something like in job costs, you were showing me my reports, and that's how people know to run a report. Can I add my Office Connector reports here on this menu? And the answer is yes. You don't have to access them from the Launchpad. You can go into Report Manager and add your reports right here. So you can do that. I'm not going to show you right here, but you can. Okay, so I said, how would you get a list of all the reports? Because there's quite a lot of them. If you come out to your web browser and you come to the Event One Software website. So Event One Software created Office Connector, and Sage sells and markets it. So it's a Sage product. It's just that we maintain it and what have you. And if you come to products and you come to Office Connector right here, oops, beg your pardon. Here under Query, there's reports included. Financials, if you get that, these are the reports. Right, here are the reports that are included. You could build your own if you have the designer. Here's the import reports. So if I go into Query, I see reports included. Then I'm going to see a big long list of all these reports right there. See a whole bunch of reports here. And I'm going down there and there's like, let's say there's one that says, there's property management ones. I don't know who all is on this thing. There's payroll related ones. There's so many ways that this can wow you, okay? But look at this quick deal. This was like the first one we created, and it's a dashboard for controllers. So you're controlling. It helps you control everybody. No, that's not what you do. But this is building dashboards is a good way of using the technology. So you go, oh, that's interesting. So you click this, and it will show you a more in-depth screenshot of that. So you can assemble information from all sorts of different applications and look at the status and use your conditional printing in Excel to bring your eyes to the things you better be paying attention to, all in one place. Otherwise, how would you know? You'd have to go and run a report here or there. And so dashboards are really powerful ways of using this technology. So that's how you can see a list. And like I say, you can see all of them. So I talked to you about the querying, and now I apologize for how quick I'm moving, but there is a lot of power in Office Connector, and I want to touch on a few other things. That writing and importing are another area. Now, I can write GL budgets. I could do my budgeting in Excel, and I can write them into Sage. And I could write forecast-related things. So I could come in here, and I could have a project forecast report, and I assemble the data for all my jobs, and maybe I have a folder called forecast and a subfolder for all my project managers. And here's a status of any job. And if you want multiple jobs in one sheet or whatever, I mean, you could get the designer and build it yourself. But this is an approach that you might use of pulling the data in, and you could lock these columns so that they can't change the values. But let's say you say, well, this is a cost to complete one, and I want to put in my cost to complete. I could just say right here, my cost to complete is $63,000. Now it's calculating these other things. So these are Excel formulas over here that are calculating things one way until you tell it that something bad's happening or whatever. And you can put comments over here. That's a big way of using Excel. People will say, well, why would you use this over a report designer? Socializing information. And this is feedback we got from your peers. Because people started buying this product, like tons of people, and we were like, why are you guys buying this? It's like, you don't know what you've created. I have the ability to, first of all, my data, I'm going to use a word, but I'm a programmer, so I didn't really think this way, but a lot of people feel like their data is trapped in whatever database they might be using. And it wouldn't just be Sage, it'd be anything. So they say, you've totally liberated the data that I can put it anywhere I need and use it. If I can get it in Excel, I can do what I need to do. As long as I don't have to keep doing this tedious process of manipulating to get the data, so I can present it to my client or whatever. So that's what we've done here. You build it once, and it's very understandable. But it's also the ability to socialize, like put in data. And you might say, well, hold it. If I put a comment, if I put an amount or a comment, what if I refresh this and another cost code shows up? What's going to happen? Now, normally in Excel, it would stay on row 10. That's probably the person asking knew that, but not with this technology. When we noticed that, and we noticed how you want to use Excel, we created technology that would keep the information you type on the correct row. That's called Office Connector Retain. So now you put your values in, and you can send that data back to Sage. And there's actually two ways. I can write the data with ODBC, that's Office Connector Write, but I could also import it. I can create the transactions, so I don't have to manually enter into miscellaneous worksheets. So that's, and now you might say, well, that's interesting, but he does cost to complete. Come over here and click this, and you can do % complete or cost at completion. And you go, oh, well, that's pretty cool. But then someone else goes, well, yeah, but that's okay. But really, we self-perform the steel down here. So I don't want cost to complete. I want to get into more detail. You can change your forecasting method by row, right here, each row. So there's a lot to do with this. I have a presentation just on all of this. And pro formas, putting in forecasts for 5 years of cash flow. I mean, there's just so much you can do with this technology. But let's take a different look. If you look, one of the most powerful ways to use the query and write together is to efficiently maintain data in your database. Now, when I was a consultant, I did everything, but of course, payroll was an area that I really did a lot at. And when people use payroll, if they have things like unions, it is a pain. I mean, you have to come in here under setup, and you have to maintain the union, the compensate the package, you know, for the one union local versus another, or the rate tables or whatever. And you have to go to here, or when you maintain an employee, there's all these screens and things, and it's like you have to go all over the place. And people thought, you know, wouldn't it be efficient if I could just lay it out more efficiently? Well, you've been able to do that for years with Office Connector easily. So I'm going to give you an example. Right here on the launch pad, see down here where it says write, there's lots of options. But there I'm going to do, if I pull this down, there's a write for maintaining payroll employees. Now, of course, you have to have access to the payroll. If you don't, you can't get in here, so don't worry. But here's a rate table and a union table. So I already generated a rate table. So I'm pulling the data out of Sage, right? I pick my rate table, I pull it out, and now am I using the use of payroll? No, I'm not. And I just go here and go think, 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 think. Now I want to get into Sage. I hit add-ins and I click this button. That will write it directly in. And it'll change. It'll be in there. So you say, well, hold a second. Wow, can I maintain employees or jobs? Can I set up a job? Vendors? Can I do that stuff? And I would say, yes. You're walking right into my little trap. But no, it's not a trap. It's an opportunity. So if I came in here, look, there's already one here to maintain employees. So if I came in here, now if you're going to build this yourself, you might say, I want rows versus columns, the way you're going to see. You'll read this, you'll understand what this is. But bear with me a moment. And I'm going to, when I come to this employee screen, I'm starting to show you the real magic. So I just want to hit on two other things real quick. And I know I'm a little bit over, but bear with me, because this is I'm hopefully that you're getting a lot of value here out of this. If I put in an existing employee, then it says there's already data out there. And I could put that data here and I could just change what is different. So I could collapse all this and just come over here and then come down here and here. And I change the data. When I want to get it into Sage, I click this and I click write. Boom. If you wanted to have one row per employee because you have certain things you want to maintain, you could do it that way. But notice if I came in here, let's say this is an employee that I have and I want to set up a new one. And they're very similar to this employee. So I just type in my new number. And now it says there's already data in the right column. Do you want to keep it? I'm going to keep it. Oop, darn it, I said overwrite it. All right, well, I just blew it. But anyway, assume I didn't do that because I'm rushing. All that data would have been here. I could come right in here and just type in, you know, Bob Sandlins, you know, whatever it is, and put in my data. Just change what's different and hit that right, and boom. Am I using the use of payroll? No, I'm not. So that's a really powerful thing. So hopefully I planted a seed on efficiently. And I've had people say, well, can you write to more than one application, more than one table? Yep, you can. So that's writing, you know. And now what if it had to be detailed, like accounts payable invoices, payroll time, job cost estimates? Can I import that? Over here on the import tab, you'll see import examples for all the different features. So clearly, yes, you can. In fact, somebody just asked me for property management people, can I import payments, you know, like a Dropbox, and I get it in a file and I just want to import it. Yeah, look at there, payments. Yes, you can. So I have an example to show you. Here's journal entries. Okay, well, that's something you might do. Let's say you've got journal entries or you want to type them in. So this one allows me, I'm using query to show me my prefixes and my base accounts, right? The query is pulling my chart of accounts, you know, and I type in my data right here, row after row. I get it the way I want, and now do I have to go into General Ledger and type it into entries again? No. There could be 1,000 rows right there. All you have to do is down here on the import, click Save Import File, and it will assemble all that data, and I can then launch General Ledger and import it, or I can run a macro. Now, when you're importing, you are using that application for that moment in time when you're importing, because there's a program in Sage that actually imports. But we will put the data in the right format so that you can import. And, you know, invoices. And one last example, because it's common. I mean, I've had people see that and go, holy cow, this person had a whole bunch of invoices. Sorry, I'm going a little bit long, but so many things I want to show you. They had a whole bunch of invoices, and what I first thought the person wanted was they wanted to manually enter invoices in Excel and use data validation. So I showed them this example. I go, oh yeah, you can use the software. So I came over here, and I have this as CRE, so I can validate my vendors and commitments and expense accounts. So they can come over here and hit, identify a vendor and start entering it. And they go, well, I want to enter a whole bunch of invoices. So I could say, well, look, click new invoice. Could you build something like this yourself using this technology? Yes, we did, but you could. Now they enter all those invoices in, and then they could send it into Sage. But the person was like, James, stop. That's not actually what I want. I have all the data in a file, right? So the challenge within accounts payable when you import is you have to create a file that looks like that. And if you miss up one of these commas, sorry, So Sage can import invoices, but you have to create a file with these parent and child and all this. It's confusing. So what I said is, oh, I get what you want to do. So what I did with her anyway is I came into an existing import, right? This is similar to the one I just showed you. And how does our software work is there's formulas. I told you it's Excel based. So look, there's a TS import formula because I bought this import feature from Accordant, let's say. And I would recommend you buy the designer because you get every import feature. But what she wanted is she had row upon row of detail. And all she wanted to do is put those formulas next to it. So she had the first one we did had 6,000 rows, and the next one had 20,000. And it doesn't matter. You could have 100,000. Once you get these things mapped, this is what builds that import file, these functions. So you can work in Excel any way you want, and then this will put it in the correct format. So that's importing capability. So hopefully I gave you a good overview. I went fast. I beg your pardon. There's a lot to cover. But I wanted to make sure that you understood that there's all this technology at your disposal. And if you want to know more, let us know. We'll provide you this in our follow-up, this PowerPoint. But this is a list of what Office Connector Financials does above and beyond the legacy financials. There's quite a lot you could do. There are, for professional services, just contact services@accordantco.com, and we can talk about a project that you may want to do, or one-on-one consulting. There's training classes available. And here's the contact information for Cheryl, and she'll be following up with you. But if you want to know more about what we've covered, this is how you get it. And I did go 8 minutes over. I beg everybody's pardon because it was scheduled for 30 minutes. Bob always tries to contain me, but I have so much stuff I want to show. I never fit into a container. Back to you.
No problem, James. Lots of information is great. So if you do have questions, type them into the box. Right now we don't have any, but if you have any right now, type them in and we'll be happy to answer them for you. I'll just give this a minute.
That's because I showed them so much that they're like, holy cow.
Very thorough.
The people, your peers using this, think of yourself using this technology after 2 or 3 years, what you would have to say. And and I've had people, now I wouldn't say this, but I'll quote someone. Someone who had shown this to this one person right when this technology was released, and he said, well, I'm not going to buy something. I can do query with Microsoft Query, and why buy something? And after 2 years, they still didn't have all these things done. So they bought the technology, and they bought a set of these quick aims that teach you how your database works and all that. And then he was at this conference, and I asked him, I said, do you have anything to say to these folks? And he said, when I had the opportunity to buy it and I didn't. And he says, I was a damn fool. And then I said, well, what advice would you give everybody? It's like, well, if you don't buy the product right now, you're a damn fool. Anyway, I wouldn't say that. He did. But the other people will say, with this technology, if you can think what you want, you can build it with this technology, because Excel has that capability. But note, we're not creating an estimating solution in Excel. That's not what this is about. We're not warehousing data. We're showing the data in Sage, but we're showing it in the most efficient way possible, so you never have to spend that time assembling data the way you want to use it. And now you can focus on the most efficient ways to present data to executives or whoever it is as a stakeholder. And client billing, all sorts of stuff you can do with this. So hopefully it helps everybody get an idea.
Okay, so we have one question. What is the cost for the module?
It is, well, really, the return on investment is so fast. Cheryl will follow up with all the pricing. I don't usually cover it because Sage business partners, Sage customer account managers cover it. But there's a price that, like I said, it's concurrency based. So there's a price for the designer that would be higher than the standard, and it's shared. You can share it, and if you're disciplined. Now, what we'll find is that when people start using these kinds of workbooks that have everything they need, they'll stop using reports and inquiry in Sage. Because why would you? There's so much you could do, and so you'll probably get a concurrency for most people. But there'll be a price for the write, another for the query, another for the import. But there's a discounted pack that Sage offers called the Power Pack. That if you wanted to do everything I showed you, it's like, look, I just want to be able to do all the things that you talked about, then you could get the query designer, write designer, import designer, and financials, and Sage gives you like this fantastic deal. So Cheryl will follow up with pricing after the presentation.
Okay, great. I don't think we have any other questions. So if oh, here's another question. I run the same COR logs over and over. It seems like this would make it much easier than reformatting the report each time. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. You're getting it. You're seeing it. Yep. And that's just the beginning. What will happen is it'll explode. People, the learning curve to learn this, it'll start, and then it starts going faster and faster. And as that's happening, you start to begin to think, hold it. I want to assemble information in this other ways, so I don't have to keep reformatting and all this stuff. Perfect. So we have other technology called Liberty Reports. So let's say you have Sage Estimating. Now estimators want to do proposals, and the same thing you just talked about, that they want to, there's formatting or language, and they don't want to keep having to do it. Use this technology. That would be Liberty Reports for Sage Estimating. But you've got it. You hit the nail on the head. That's an excellent use of this technology.
Great. Thank you. So I don't think we have any more questions. So if you do decide you have a question, you can always contact us later. I'll be sending out the recording later with our contact information, and feel free to reach out. Cheryl Fogarty will also be following up, and we will send you out the recording later today. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. Have a great day. Thanks, James.
Thank you. You're welcome.